Hi, I'm Jan Doyle. Welcome to Wyse Talk. Today's guest is the incredible Mickey Lawler. I've heard about her for years, and when I first met her, all I wanted to do was touch her and see if she was real, because she comes with such a reputation. Welcome to the show, Mickey.
Thank you, Jan.
He's really, absolutely, you're a legend. Now, I understand when we were talking earlier that you've been doing fabric painting for 34 years?
Yes, at least 34, maybe longer.
That's incredible. How did you get started in all this?
Well, I was making a lot of quilts. My grandmother was a quilt maker. And so, but I got to the point after 50 or 60 quilts that where I wanted to do something different. There was a whole group of people from the Boston area who were doing innovative quilts at that time, Michael James and Nancy Halpern and these people. And I got frankly tired of making bed quilts. So I wanted to do some kinds of landscape quilts, but there was nothing on the market at that time for landscape fabrics. There was, we had to go to the rummage area, the remnant area rather, in fabric shops to try to find some kind of drapery fabric that looked like sky or it looked like water or anything like that. So I actually started by tie-dyeing fabric, thinking that would be good. However, at that time, the dyes were toxic, and I had 3 little kids at home, and they were hot water dyes. So I had these huge pots, and I would, dye during the day while the kids were at school. But finally, a friend of mine, and I didn't think that was such a great idea. One little kid came in one day, a friend of my daughter, and said, "Oh, what's for dinner, Mrs. Lawler?" And I said, "Red." So I mean, that's pretty much what the kitchen looked like.
Wow.
So then a friend of mine, Jean Thibodeau, introduced me to these set-of-color fabric paints. And I thought life couldn't get any better, and it couldn't really at that point, because it meant that I could actually paint. These are textile paints. They were textile paints. They've since, the company that makes them, PBO, which is a French paint company, just discontinued all of their textile paints.
Yeah, I heard that. That's a couple of months ago.
It makes me crazy because I've been using them for 35 years. So, but anyway, I have found some really wonderful paints through Pro Chemical and Dye Works in Somerset, Massachusetts. And so I am going to try to go to those, as well as jacquard paints, which are also fairly good textile paints. I'm not sure any of them, I think they all are good quality, yeah. So anyway, I have to transition at this age. Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, you worked with something for 34 years.
I know every single nuance of every single color,
Yeah, it's worse than a divorce, actually.
It is.
Really?
It is. Yeah, I presume it is.
Yeah, well, okay. I know.
So, okay. So, I'll take it from there. But yeah. So, once I got going on the paints, which are basically watercolors that are permanent on textiles. They're heat set with an iron. It's the most user-friendly thing to do, is to actually paint the fabric with a textile paint. Because unlike dyes, you don't have all this measuring and worries about toxicity. These are non-toxic paints. All of the ones that I just mentioned actually are non-toxic paints. So I could use those with kids. Not that I do too often, but using the paints for that length of time and painting. I actually figured it out a while back that I've painted 48,000 yards of fabric since I started.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So most of my fabrics are landscape oriented because I had fallen in love with making landscape quilts. And so it's a lot of different skies and waters and that kind of thing. But once I got going on that, I just couldn't stop. I love doing it, brushes, sponges, anything you can use to get the paint on the fabric. Yeah.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. Yeah. Now, how did you realize that this was a good business for you to?
Oh, okay.
Now you understand.
That's a good question. Yeah.
You started off with a quilt shop.
I did.
Most people don't know that.
I actually had a small shop in Simsbury, Connecticut, from 1980 to 1985. And I was very fortunate in 1985 to sell it to one of the women who worked there. But the reason I sold it was, in the meantime, I think 1982 or 83, I started painting the fabric. I started painting fabric at that time. And then I would sell it in the shop. Well, people were buying more of the painted fabric, it seemed, than the regular quilt fabric. And the quilt fabric that was available at that time was just little calicos or stripes or, you know, actually it's pretty boring fabric.
Very limited.
Very limited. And so people were buying this fabric, and I thought, what's wrong with this picture? I'm paying a landlord. So I sold the shop. I took the whole business of the painted fabric home, called it Sky Dyes, because I had started by dyeing fabric. And Sky Paints just didn't sound as great as Sky Dyes. So it's been called Sky Dyes, which is a little disconcerting for many people because they think I dye fabric, but I don't dye fabric at all. I paint fabric. Paints are pigments, and they sit on the surface of the fibers. Dyes form a chemical bond with a fiber, so on both sides you see the same thing. You know, they're the same on both sides. But if you take a look at a piece of painted fabric, the other side is generally much lighter.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know,
I'm just going to, I'm going to just hold up the correct side.
Yeah, that's
and
the right
then,
side.
by the way, this is just gorgeous. And then I'm going to flip it around to the back.
Yeah,
and
it's paler.
It's
generally.
paler.
Yeah.
But oh my God, this is just gorgeous.
And thank you. Well, that's the sort of thing. I started by doing a lot of yardage, and some of the pieces you can see here, and so that was the sort of thing people were buying primarily.
So I have some yardage here.
Oh yeah,
so
good.
This is so that and this is what, a yard of fabric?
That's a yard of fabric, right?
And so people were buying this, and I could see them fussy cutting.
Oh, absolutely.
Could you explain fussy cutting?
Oh, do I have
Because I know people aren't going to know what it means.
Fussy cutting, well, I guess that the best way to explain it is that you just cut out the area that you want to use, you know, in your quilt.
As
and
I'm
so
looking
it
at-
might be just a small circle in there, or it might be a triangle, or whatever it is, you know. And so they would buy, I sell it in quarter yard, half yard, and yard pieces. I paint, at this time I only paint 5 yards of each at a time. When I first started, I was painting 8 yards of each, and I had 3 8-yard tables that I could work on. So I just would paint and paint and paint. I was doing about 5,000 yards a year.
That is just unbelievable.
Now that wasn't
to
right
me.
at the beginning. Right at the beginning, I certainly wasn't doing that much. But over time, I did set up these tables outside. I love working outside in the summertime because the sun dries the fabric, and that's perfect. And plus, it's just a nice environment in which to work.
How long does it take to dry a fabric?
It depends, of course, on the day. If it's very humid, it takes a little longer to dry.
Right.
But
right.
And the humidity isn't a problem as long as there's sun. But if you if it's a normal late June day, 20 minutes maybe. I mean, it just dries really fast if the sun is right on it.
I have to tell you what I'm noticing, and I know you have some more samples over there.
Right.
What I'm noticing is there's such a beautiful use of color. Did you study art, or do you pick it up yourself?
I did. After I got out of college, I majored in English, and I always tell my classes that that's why I speak so grammatically correctly when I teach. But but actually, I was a frustrated artist. So the first thing I did when I graduated was take art classes.
It shows. This is just so beautiful.
I think there's a sort of innate, and I think quilters, most quilters, have an innate sense of color anyway. If you look at quilts and by people who have never taken an art class, sometimes they're just absolutely great about choosing color. But yes, over the years, I've taught myself, and I've also taken more classes.
So, and this doesn't look like a straight brush. It looks like almost a sponge on here. Or am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I use whatever I can to get the paint on the fabric. Very often, I use fairly large bottles of each color. And I will say that it takes me twice as long, 3 times as long, to mix the paints the night before than it does to actually paint the fabric.
Oh, that's interesting, yes.
Because you have to try out the paint, see how they look together. Is this the color that you want? But at any rate, in terms of putting the paint on the fabric, very often I will pour it on and brush. because I'm working on 5 yards of fabric.
Yes,
you know.
yes, that makes a lot of sense.
And out in the sun, and this summer the sun's been really hot. So,
yes, yes.
So I find myself pouring it on and then brushing it, you know.
Now, is this PDF fabric or
This
just?
fabric is amazing. I have used this fabric for my entire painting career.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a broadcloth, a cotton, 100% cotton broadcloth. It is from a company called Test Fabrics, T-E-S-T Fabrics. They're not in the mainstream of the quilt world. It is prepared for dyeing, but it is a scoured broadcloth, number, oh, I used to know the number perfectly, but now I can't remember the number. But it's a scoured broadcloth. The feel of it is so nice and smooth.
It is.
It is the one thing about broadcloth is that it's a more tightly woven fabric. So,
okay.
and if the threads are fine enough, it's a very smooth, almost silky feel to it. The nice thing about a tightly woven fabric is that the paint goes on the fabric, doesn't leak through the fabric, and that's why it's lighter on the other side too. But it doesn't leak through the fabric because there's so many threads holding that paint on top that the paint stays on top.
Let's go to some of the JPEGs of the pictures that you brought in,
sure.
so that we can have a look at it. Now, the first one that is coming up there are the materials that you're using.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about this.
Oh, I have all the different kinds of paints there. There's Liquitex, there's Createx. It's a good idea to try out a lot of different paints, you know, that are textile paints, and see which ones you like. I like the Cetacolor. I would get the Cetacolor, you know, order the Cetacolor. Then I would put it in those little squirt bottles that you can see there. I would dilute it 1 part water, 1 part paint, just so that it was more mixable. And then from there, I would add more water to dilute the paint if I needed it a little bit lighter. I would almost always add water. I use just plain old chip brushes. Those are cheap brushes that you can buy anywhere, you know, a dollar store or something. And they don't last long, but they're fine brushes to use.
And I'm noticing you have a sponge that I use in my car.
Oh, yeah. A natural sponge is a really, really good thing to have. And for one thing, it makes an imprint of clouds really well.
Oh,
if you want to do a nice blue sky with clouds, and that's what I use it for a lot. Natural sponges are a little harder to come by and a little more expensive now. But do invest in a good natural sponge. I have used several until they just are almost gone, you know, and over years and years.
The next image is called Sunset 1.
Okay, this is kind of instructional, or definitely instructional. I mixed 2 different colors. This golden color, or maybe 3, I think, in this, a kind of a bright yellow and an orangey yellow. And I started stroking the paints onto a damp piece of fabric. Now, in this case, I used a piece of foam core underneath that was covered by contact paper, so it had an impervious covering. And then I put the piece of fabric down. Then I dampened the fabric with a misting bottle, a bottle that was set on mist. And then I would, and very much like any kind of watercolor on paper, but this is on fabric, and then I would just start stroking on the paints. And I think we have another section.
Yeah, the next one. So
next one. Okay, that's just, you know, more of the same, where there's a nice pink now going up from the bottom to the top.
And the next one?
Okay, and then I moved up into the blues and purples for the top of this. This was going to be a sunset. I had envisioned a sunset with a sun, you know, starting to go down. And so, of course, I use a different brush for each one, each color.
Okay, that's a good point. And the next picture, I think you're going to start this.
Oh, I'm going to start the sun. So what I did was mix a gold metallic paint with a little bit of golden yellow. And I just needed to try it out on a test cloth. I try all my colors out on test cloths. I call them test cloths. They're just an extra piece of cloth that that you test the color on to make sure that you like what it looks like next to another color.
And then going on to the next
we're
image,
going to actually paint that. Now, that little sponge brush is a great tool for painting circles because you just have to twist it and it makes a nice circle. So I have.
That's interesting because I noticed you switched brushes. That's interesting.
Yeah, I switched
and they're
to
very
the sponge
inexpensive.
brush. Very inexpensive,
Yeah.
yes.
And I think the next slide is the.
I think it's the finished one.
Yeah.
Yes, there we go. Yeah. So
Oh, super.
There's just a little, a little piece of a sky with the sun.
Now I understand. Actually, I bought these going back to here. When I knew you were going to be on the show, I went online, Amazon, my favorite store in life, and because these aren't available anymore.
No,
Why aren't they in print?
Well, because C&T Publishing, who published both my books, take their books out of print after a certain length of time, and there's not much I can do about it.
Well,
it was a kick to write them, though. I have to tell you that, especially the first one, the one you're holding. This one, this is when they first asked me to write a book about painting fabric, and at that time I was the only one painting fabric, and I had so much fun with the editors there and coming up with this book. It was a lot of work. It took a year and a half. A lot of work.
Who did all the photos for it?
My friend Jack McConnell.
Oh, you mentioned him
my dear
earlier.
friend, who is just the most phenomenal photographer in Connecticut, and you must go to his website, Jack McConnell. He's just a super person. Anyway, he was very helpful with both books.
Now the first book is called Sky Dyes.
Yes.
And you said some people don't like the name?
Oh, no, they like the name.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, I guess the reason I said that was because then people think it's dyeing fabric.
Oh, okay, that's
and
a
it's
good
not
point.
dyeing fabric. And that's the name of my company, too,
Sky Dyes.
Yes.
And then this one's Sky Quilts?
This one was, this was the sequel to Sky Dyes, and C&T, the publishers, asked me if I would please write a book showing how the painted fabric could be used. But they also wanted me to show more of how to paint the fabric. So this one was not as much of a labor of love as it was just a labor. I mean, this one was really tough because I did come up with I did have to make quilts for it. I had to show people, how to make the quilts as well as how to paint the fabric.
That is a lot of work.
So it was a lot of work, but I think it was really worthwhile. There are patterns in the back of it.
I just noticed
full-size
that, yes.
patterns in the back of the book. Yeah.
Well, I'm also this is available. These are some beautiful images in here. I just like to warn people that this is only available as a used bookstores on Amazon.
Yeah.
They're not that easy to find.
Right.
I'm thrilled that I have them. And maybe after the show you could autograph them for
yeah,
I would love it.
Of course.
And then you also have, and I'm going to go back and get this on Amazon because you said it's there, is you have a DVD out.
Right. C&T Publishing, the ones who published my books, actually asked me if I would do a DVD as well. And I was thrilled. I had so much fun doing this. They sent a producer and a crew to my house, and we worked for 3 days on this DVD, and I really love this DVD. There's another DVD that was put out recently by American Quilt Society also in conjunction with an iQuilt class that I'm teaching. Now, iQuilt is an online quilt class that American Quilt Society sponsors, and that's been very successful too. But I particularly love this DVD. I just think it's really
I have to
neat.
go back and get that one because I'm so happy that I own the books. I'll just have to go back and get that. Now, when in your second book, Sky Quilts, you talk about the word design strips.
Oh, yeah.
What is a design strip?
A design strip, well, actually, these two quilts back here show the design strip. My idea with that I came up with in order to write this book was that all you need is a big piece of sky and a big piece of ground and just a strip in between that you design yourself, which makes the work so much better. and so much easier because there's just that strip in the middle with the houses that is the design part of this quilt. Of course, the painted fabric provides design as well, but that's what you design yourself. And it could be, I did one with mountains, I did one with, what else, a city. So that design strip, which is only probably 9 or 10 inches, you know, by however wide you want your quilt, is a really simple thing to design yourself. It's you just take a big piece of paper and doodle it, and almost any quilt maker can, you know, put that part together, and then sew it to a big piece of sky and a big piece of ground.
Well, that's interesting because over here, I know these are part you. What is the size of this? Do you remember?
That one is, I don't know, it should say the size.
19 by 29.
Okay, yeah,
All
that's
right.
just an arbitrary size.
But then you have, like, this is just remarkable. To me, all you need is a boat.
Yeah, well,
And
this
you're
is
done.
what people are doing with these. Now, probably, oh gee, I don't know, it must be at least 10 or 15 years ago, I got started on just doing the small scenic pieces, which was a lot of fun for me, and people seem to enjoy them. So somebody might just put a boat in there, someone might, I don't know what, you know, once I sell these, they're out of my power.
Do you ever see them again in shows or?
I very often will get a photograph sent to me, you know, of what the person did with it.
Because that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
And then this one is.
This one is just a huge.
Oh, this is huge.
Yeah, this is just a huge piece of.
Oh wow.
Of sunset.
So this could easily be. Have a design strip in it.
Yep.
Or I think I have it upside down.
Oh, it doesn't matter either way.
Okay,
actually.
and this could easily, and
Yeah.
you have everything here.
You could actually even cut that apart right here, for that matter, put the design strip in the middle, and use this as water with the reflection on it.
Wow.
You know, that would be really cool. That would be really cool.
That really would be.
I might do that.
Wow. I could
know.
see doing some thread painting and doing something like that with this.
A lot of
Wow.
people do thread painting on my fabrics lately. Well, thread painting is very big right now.
Yes, it is. Very, very nice.
Yeah. And then there's, well, this one is actually better. What's that one? Oh, that's a cute.
Oh,
that's a sweet little.
Now this is lovely.
I don't know which way that goes. Oh,
Now, on
you're
your-
showing the back of it, right?
I'm showing the back
Yeah.
of it. Okay. Now that's interesting. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Oh
Yeah,
my!
there's,
I'm looking at it. I forgot I had to show it to the public. Oh my
Yeah.
good! Look how beautiful this is.
But these are basically, you know, these are pictures that I paint on fabric.
These are
And
just
quilt
beautiful.
makers do what they want to with them. You know, my theory is always, you know, that I am only providing a tool for someone else's creativity as well, you know? And there's such a wonderful sense of a circular power there, energy, you know?
Yes.
And that's the backside too.
Well, that's the back. Oh, that's so interesting that I mess it up.
No,
oh, now
that's
this
good.
is
That's
just beautiful.
It's just a little seascape, you know?
This is
but I
just.
do-
I suppose I have to show it and stop looking. This is just beautiful.
I tend to do a lot of pieces with water in them. I go to Cape Cod a lot, so.
Oh yes.
so-
That's just beautiful.
Well, thanks.
Now we don't have all that much time left, only about
Oh, yeah.
5 minutes.
Oh, dear.
But so do you, when you do something like this, and do you preconceive how you would use
Yeah.
it, or
Oh, no, not how I would use it, never.
do
No.
you preconceive the design?
I certainly do, yes. And very often I'll draw it out ahead of time
Oh,
on
I was wondering if
paper.
you did
Yeah,
that.
on paper, just to see what what it would look like and what the proportions might be and that kind of thing. And sometimes I'll even, take some watercolor on paper and check it out and see if I want to do it that way or,
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I know we were talking earlier, you don't go to Houston anymore, that you don't vend anymore,
Oh,
you're
that's
just
right.
online.
Yeah.
So,
I'm getting too old for that.
yeah. Well, so what is your website so people
My
could go?
website is www.skydyes.com.
And people can look at these and buy these online?
Yeah, and they go quickly. I mean, I have a newsletter that I send out maybe every 2 months when there are new fabrics up. And so then I get a flurry of orders, and you know, they come and go all the time.
Wow.
Which is fun because it keeps me working, and I love doing this. Yeah.
Well, it's the work is. Have you seen a change in your work from when you started?
Oh, sure, of course, thank heaven.
Oh, I love the colors. I love the colors.
Oh, thank
now,
you.
are they washable?
Yes, they are. They're washable. They're dry cleanable, and they're very light fast. Which is different from dyed and commercial fabrics quite a bit.
What does light fast mean?
Light fast means that if they're hanging, you know, in your house and there's a lot of light in that room, they're not going to fade. Okay. They're not going to fade as quickly as dyed or commercial fabrics. They are not as rub fast. So if you were to make a garment out of one of these fabrics, and the underarm area, you would notice, would start to dull a little bit after a while, because remember, the paints are sitting on top of the fibers.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, what is your contact information again?
www.skydyes.com.
Okay, and I know you give classes and you teach.
I love teaching.
Yes. Is that on your website also?
Yes, it is. That and the gallery, and dates when when I'll be teaching and where.
Oh, super. The gallery would be wonderful too. And you're also a member of SAQA.
I am. Proudly member of SAQA.
Yeah, and what is SAQA?
SAQA is the Studio Art Quilters Association. SAQA is an international organization now that provides a place for people who are known as art quilters. And so that means that we don't make quilts just for beds. We make quilts to hang on the wall. I mean, how many beds can we really cover? You know?
They're not utilitarian quilts
They're
anymore.
not
utilitarian.
Right.
When quilts kind of first started, a couple 100 to 300 years ago, I won't say just first started, but they were meant for service, for use.
Yes.
And now they're meant for the, our quilts are meant for the wall.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled I had the opportunity to learn about you. I'm thrilled that I have your books. I'm going to get your DVD, and I think that your work is phenomenal.
Oh, just keep it coming, Jan. I love it.
So please contact her at skydyes.com.
Skydye, SKYDYES.
Okay, or if you forget that, you can always contact me at jmdteach@comcast.net, and I'll give you the information. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jan. This has been fun.